From the studios of KENW on the campus of Eastern New Mexico University, it's You Should Know, featuring the people and events of Eastern New Mexico and West Texas.
Welcome to You Should Know. I'm your host, Evelyn Ledbetter, and today I have the pleasure of having Chris Rekrut with me. He is an ENMU professor of the College of Business. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
For sure, for sure. So you actually, the way I kind of met you was through Rotary, so we're fellow Rotarians. And then, of course, I was a College of Business grad here at Eastern as well, so you're carrying the torch. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, or family life, or anything you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, of course. Grew up in Southern California. Normal childhood with the exception of all the cameras and TV stuff nearby. I was fairly close to the Hollywood area. I kind of got tired of school, was bored. I wanted to travel the world and learn a skill. So I ended up joining the military in the late 90s. Ended up at my first base in Seattle area, met my wife, and then of course 9/11 happened and the military got a little awkward pretty quick.
It changed overnight, didn't it?
Yeah, we spent at least 10 years living overseas. I've actually traveled to every continent except for Antarctica, and I will get there someday. So lots of time traveling, lots of deployments, lots of military trips.
And what was your actual duty? What did you actually do in the military?
So I did aircraft maintenance, but specifically electrical systems and then HVAC systems. So the heating, the air conditioning, the oxygen, and systems like the anti-G suit. So it was fun. Got to work on some of the explosives. And then worked my way into contract management, quality assurance. Spent a few years doing vocational training. So I got to teach young electricians how to be electricians, which kind of lit the fire for academia, I guess.
Was teaching them.
It was. It was fun watching the light bulb turn on. I mean, these are young people that basically get broken and turn into a soldier. They show up at their first technical training. They're still kind of military. They learn some trade. They show up at their first base and they would come to me. And then I could teach, okay, you learned some skills, you learned some trades, now let's teach you how to actually apply it here on our aircraft. So it was fun, very hands-on, not much classroom.
And you can just see it in their eyes when it goes click.
Absolutely.
That light bulb kind of shows up.
Absolutely.
And your spouse also military.
Yeah, she was also a military. We met actually on the flight line working on airplanes. She was a jet engine mechanic, which is pretty cool.
That is.
Yeah, she gets the wow factor for her job. And then, we moved to Turkey, Delaware first, spent about 5 years there, and then moved to Turkey. We spent 2 years there, and then went to England for about 7 years, and then came here to Cannon and Clovis, finished up my last 5 years. So I did just under 25 years.
So that's how you actually ended up in Portales?
Yes. We moved here in April of 2021, and then picked Portales for where to live. And we bought a house sight unseen from England. We had no clue what the city was like. I think I made the right choice. Portales is quite nice.
I'm not objective. I like Portales, but this has been home. So and so you have younger children, I guess.
Yeah, so we have 3 kids. The oldest actually joined the Air Force, so she's off married. She just made staff sergeant, so she's already been in the military about 4 years. She's married, has our baby, our grandbaby. So we have a 1-year-old grandbaby, which is nuts.
That is.
Our middle child just turned 20. She's at Abilene Christian University studying finance. And then our youngest is 15. She's actually here on campus today for the art week.
How cool is that?
So it's pretty neat.
What an interesting life that you've led, and also that you've introduced, and your children have grown up. So many opportunities.
Yeah, they grew up very cultured.
That is not the average life that most kiddos have. So the teaching when you were in the military, that's what drew you. You decided. How did you decide College of Business?
So the reality is I didn't know this world really existed. I was a full-time student for associates, bachelor's, and then finished an MBA. The Air Force forced education, so you had to go to school. After a while, it became normed. It was just what you do.
It's just part of your job.
You get off work, you try to be dad and husband, leader during the day, and you study on the couch while the family watches Netflix.
Gotcha. And you're working on your doctorate.
So I got out of the military. I wanted to use my GI benefits for the GI Bill. So I started the doctorate program, which then coincidentally opened up a door to teach. And I saw the job posted online, and I kind of joked with the dean about it a couple times. But without a doctorate at the time, I didn't think it was even possible. And they created a visiting position to come in as like a 1-year test drive, which was amazing because it was a test drive for me as well as them.
Sure.
And I guess it clicked because they like me and I like them. And I actually just signed the contract, so starting August, I'm full-time.
Well, congrats.
And should be about a year out from the doctorate, which is pretty awesome.
Well, good for us. That's great. And of course, being through Rotary, you had actually done a presentation on tariffs.
Yes.
And that's a pretty hot subject, you know, in different political scenes. So it was very educational. And so I'd asked you to come in and just visit with us about that. So if you're ready to jump in, we'll get started on the exciting world of tariff. You know, economics was not one of my favorite classes, but you actually teach finance and some, or you said management, right?
I teach management, business, really anything in the MBA, BBA type of world. The economics portion is by far my least favorite.
Yeah,
it is hard.
It is.
And the accounting is similar for me. I'm glad we have bean counters because I want to pay them to do it for me. But no, the macroeconomics I teach, and hopefully not much longer, it's fun because it's business.
Right.
It's the generic unemployment, tax, inflation, and then of course international trade and tariffs gets brought up quite a few times in that class.
Okay.
And it's entry level enough to be fun, but still you get to dig a little deep and kind of compare yourselves to other countries and challenge some students to think outside their normal bubble.
Sure. Well, let's just start off with this. I mean, tell us what a tariff is, and basically, you know, a little bit of the history of the tariffs in U.S.
Yeah, so ultimately tariffs is a tax on an imported good. And the important thing to think about is the government doesn't get a paycheck, with the exception of taxes. So we get paid for working, the government doesn't, except for by taxes. So by implementing a tariff, they do increase their own revenue. So from the government making more money from tariff tax, now they could spend it on other infrastructure and other things in the government, which is a good thing.
Right.
The catch is if you're tariffing imported goods, in theory, you're making the imported good more expensive. So big picture, the American-made product ends up cheaper. We buy made in America, we buy a little less foreign. It helps the economy, it protects some things. Small picture, your inexpensive stuff that we like off Wish or Temu or name the website, it might cost more.
And basically that tariff, I mean, so somebody's paying that tax. So it's either going to be the consumer or the business or...
Yeah, and that's where it's interesting is a lot of people think the tariff is paid by the country. It's if we tariff Chinese imports, for example, China's not paying a tariff. It's the importer. So, and even the company that's producing the item might not be paying the tariff. It's the importer. So the exporter that's exporting out of China is not even necessarily paying the tariff. It's going to be the person importing it. And then in turn, they're going to pass the buck. They have to, or they have to suffer profit margin loss.
And so, and like you said, that revenue of whoever winds up paying that tax go back into the coffers of the country that's being imported to.
Yeah, so ultimately it ends up being a little bit higher price on the shelf. Big picture, that helps our GDP. It does help consumption and production in our own nation. But at the same time, when things cost more, the last time I went to Walmart, my grocery cart cost quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's just gone up exponentially over the last couple of years.
And GDP is something, gross domestic product.
Yes.
That may not be something everybody's familiar with, but typically, I mean, I'll let you say exactly what that is.
Overall, just the quantifiable portion of what the country's making, really. So you have a portion of government purchases because they're buying stuff on the economy as well. They're paying for contracts. You have an investment money. And then, of course, you have your net export. So how much are you exporting? How much are you importing? And then really overall is consumption. What are we buying on the economy?
And obviously it's much better for an economy when it's typically when it's homegrown or home built.
Yes, I think so. There is some wild cards though. I mean, as Americans, we do like expensive foreign products. And we also like inexpensive foreign products. So we thrive off Amazon. We thrive off buying stuff off the internet, which tends to be inexpensive. And then you get the wild card purchases like the Ferraris.
Sure.
The import cars, the Rolex watches,
the high dollar fashion.
And those are different. They could withstand tariffs because if you could afford that product, you could afford the extra tax.
The good thing about when you do have products from in the States, that affects our employment and our workers and who's here working. And then in turn, those people are paying taxes as well on their salaries and things like that.
Yeah, they have in macroeconomics, they actually call it the multiplier effect. So for example, if the dairy farm or one of the local companies gets a big investment and they produce a lot more revenue in the area, even if they have artificial intelligence or robotics or other systems working the equipment, and they don't necessarily hire a single employee, it's still going to bring money into the economy. You're going to need more food trucks. You're going to need more hotels. You're going to need more workers to fix the equipment. You're going to need more delivery trucks to transport the equipment. So that multiplier effect, just like here when we see graduation, all the restaurant parking lots are a little bit fuller.
Sure.
And soon with the air races moving to Roswell, so instead of Reno, California, I mean, that's going to change some things.
They're staying in hotels, they're shopping, they're buying meals. It brings that money in.
Yeah.
That trickle-down effect of how many times that dollar turns.
Exactly.
So, and so tell me a little bit the history. Tariffs, have they always been in place in the U.S. or they started pretty early, right?
They started very early. So 1776, we became what we are, and really by 1778, tariffs were implemented. So every single presidency that we've had since the beginning of our country has used tariffs in one way or another. And some are a bit more extreme, some throw some higher percentages, but really they've been around since the beginning. We helped pay ourselves back in that government revenue from the tax for what it cost to have the wars. We helped tariffs after the Civil War. We helped use tariffs to get out of the Great Depression. We helped use tariffs to get out of World War I. I mean, financially, it is a form of revenue. So they have been around since really the beginning of us.
So no matter politically, whichever party or view you happen to have, every presidency has used tariffs after 1780.
Yeah, absolutely. It's for us, it's always been.
Right.
And even prior to the United States, other countries have had other forms of tariffs all the way back to the Silk Road and trade through the Middle East. And it's always been around, just in one way or another, and likely to produce money, but also to protect the local farmer, to protect the local producer. If a foreign item could come in cheaper and flood the shelves, it may be good for consumers, but it might put a bunch of businesses out.
And then they lose employees.
Exactly.
And so again,
which then it's bad for consumers. So.
Yeah. So that balancing act is always enough to benefit your country, and countries that aren't as developed, typically they try to do tariffs to protect their own goods and products to keep that in their country. Or tell me about that.
Yeah, they'll use tariffs. They'll also use subsidies and quotas. So they use all three. It's the reality with a quota is, imagine just limiting how much stuff could come in. So if we're a rice farm in Japan, for example, and maybe our rice is just as good and cheaper, you can't just flood the market and destroy the local rice crops. So they do some type of a quota. Okay, we'll allow imported rice, but only a certain amount. And then the subsidies, kind of similar to a quota, but instead of limiting what comes in, they just realize it's kind of uneven. The big businesses from outside could come in and take us over. So instead, we're going to give you some extra money to help. So it's more of just a subsidy think of it as an extra paycheck from the government.
Right. I know, like on wind turbines, there's subsidies and things that are paid to those different wind farms and things. If you can't compete against petroleum prices, because it is much more expensive, then the government may provide that subsidy to have that business here in the States.
And we see it in many different ways. It's the same as if you bought new appliances that are energy efficient. There used to be like tax breaks. Now, I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
Or buying the electric vehicles or the hybrid vehicles, there were these tax breaks.
Or the ethanol, to help that wasn't economic if they couldn't compete against petroleum 100%. So the corn, they subsidized the ethanol.
Exactly.
Fuel.
And really that's just another form of like a subsidy. It's just done as like a government grant or a tax credit.
And the quota basically, if your company or say your country can grow enough rice for 80% of the consumption, they may allow 20% in to make up that difference.
And instead of a percentage by what they could produce to ensure the right level of consumption, it might just be just to keep things fair and even. So instead of an exact math with we could do 80, we'll allow 20, it might be although we could do 80, we're only going to allow 10. And they might want a gap to purposely control price. Or they might allow 30. So now we have 10 extra. But that also helps with a little bit of competition. It'll keep the local farmers' prices within reason.
Okay.
So the math isn't always perfect.
Well, and so something that leads into this, the purpose of tariffs, do you feel like they've primarily been economic, political, or a kind of a mix of both?
Yeah, I truly feel it's been a mix of everything. I mean, they start out initially as revenue because it is just a tax. Mm-hmm. So ideally, we need money for the government to run. So here's another way to get government money. However, as it balances out, I mean, it starts out as maybe we have an additional percentage on goods. So now we have 10% of all dollars spent elsewhere might go to the government. But from there, it's also going to protect local economies, local companies, local industry. And then on top of which, it entices reshoring. So this is something that a lot of people don't think about is we offshored corporations.
Right.
So some of the most American-made cars are Honda, or, and
Mm-hmm.
other import cars. It's Dodge, for example, is assembled quite a bit in Mexico.
Well, and along with that, some of the parts,
Exactly.
even though it may be assembled here, a lot of the
vast
parts
majority
are coming from other countries.
Yeah, absolutely. So with everything coming in, we've offshored manufacturing to these other locations, and maybe it's because of cheaper employment, maybe it's less taxes, maybe it's tax breaks and things like that. But the reality is as tariffs make it more expensive to bring those items back, it might be cheaper to just bring the entire company back. So what we're seeing right now is, Apple's investing some of the largest investments we've seen in recent history, that's for sure.
To come back into the U.S.
Oh yeah, with massive AI computer centers and infrastructures, and Hyundai is doing the same in Indiana.
Well, the semiconductors.
It's a $500 billion investment from Hyundai. I mean, so it's massive money. And although those companies are going to have a lot of robotics, and it might not bring a ton of employment in that region, it's the support. It's that same multiplier effect. So the employees they bring, even if they only bring foreign employment, which I don't see happening, it'll likely be a balance. Mm-hmm. But even if they didn't hire a single local person, they're still going to need places to live. The roads have to get better, schools, taxes. So that multiplier, it will help.
Well, and that's something we do for our television and radio. We have underwriters, and basically that's a way that the business helps us out by, and some of the funding on those is through lodgers tax, and it's basically people that stay in hotels, but they do an underwriting with us. It helps us continue with the cost of the production, but it is a tax on that as well. So kind of interesting. But so the difference you've talked about the differences between the tariff and the trade quotas and things like that. But we've talked about who actually pays the tariff and things. Is it fair? Is it balanced? Like, from what I have read and researched, the rates that we pay to export is different than the rates. I mean, the import, the tariff taxes are much different.
Yeah, and one of the things, I mean, again, to try to stay a little bit more bipartisan, and because again, each political system has all used them. So regardless which way we swing from Republican to Democrat or independent, libertarian, everybody's used them. But currently what we're seeing is trying to make it fair. So for example, we might charge a 10% tariff on a Japanese imported item, but in Japan, there might be a 400% tariff on an American item being imported.
Does it typically rate?
Statistically speaking, around the globe, it's been uneven. But that's also looking at it from just the outside in blanket picture, just looking at it. So if you start really analyzing it, should a Harley Davidson cost that much more in Japan? Well, sure, maybe. It's good for business. It's good for the importer, the exporter. It's considered the niche item there. It'd be like us wanting a Ferrari here.
Right.
But at the same time, if it was on every item that way, it's also to help protect their local economy. If some big American corporation goes into a small developing nation, they could essentially afford to wipe out the local competition.
And they're not blanket tariffs. It's not like it's the tariff rate on every product that comes in.
No, exactly. So for example, recently with China, we have some tariffs on them, of course. Most people have seen the news. The retaliatory tariffs that China put into place was soybean and some of the agriculture type things. So really they're retaliating back with farming.
And farming, my family farms, and I know that is an area that gets hit
very
heavily on tariffs.
Yeah, and that was similar back in 2008. We had tariffs on dairy going into Mexico, for example.
Right.
And so this isn't new.
No.
But it's one of those things where if you did everything entering our border gets 20%, well, yeah, that gives us some money. But it's also unfair because not everything should be a blanket, just sweep across, and it can't be that easy.
Sure.
It has to be that balance between the percentage versus the item, kind of like you said, the 80% of rice compared to the 20% of rice.
Do you feel like the modern tariffs, do you think they've been effective in bringing back manufacturing or reshaping our trade balance?
I think yes, but it's also kind of early to tell. I mean, with things like Hyundai moving in and Apple with big investments, there's already been some reshoring of some of the automotive manufacturing. I mean, yes, it's going to bring jobs, it's going to bring manufacturing. The reality is the lag. How can we afford the delay? And will the small businesses outlast the delay? So similar to the COVID pandemic, the major corporations stayed afloat.
Right.
Walmart's not going to shut down because we limit how many customers could go in there, but the local stores might.
And the hard part, I'll see if you agree, when our administration changes at a minimal every 4 years or every 8 years, and you have different viewpoints on whoever's in office, sometimes that doesn't give you the time frame to see if the benefits that are put in place in one administration have time to be seen.
I agree completely. And we talk about this quite often, actually, in some of the business classes that I teach is, for example, China, they politically think and strategize for a dynasty.
For long term.
For generations.
Right.
They're planning for 100 years and then some. And we tend to think 4 to 8 years.
Right.
And in reality, with a 4-year term, this is the second time in history we've had a president not do consecutive terms. So unless things change, he could only do these 4 years. And really by year 3, what's he doing? It probably slows back a little bit and starts politicking for the next person.
Right.
So you start out with 1 year of kind of undoing what may have been done. You spend a year of maybe fixing some things or starting some things. You spend a year of hopefully fine-tuning it. And then really you don't see it to fruition because next thing you know, you're paving the way for the next person.
So a lot of the times those small companies, they feel the hurt of the transition to a different philosophy, and you don't see fruition, and then it's changed back another way.
Exactly. So can they afford to wait? It's the menu cost, the shelf cost. We live in such a world of globalization where most of our products go through so many different borders before it ends up on the shelf that we buy it from.
That's true.
Or the website that we click on. I mean, multiple borders. So one item might be imported through 3 countries before it comes to us. So each country has tariffs. We are definitely not the only country with tariffs.
I remember when I visited the Netherlands, and they were ranked as the largest exporter. And I wasn't clicking because it's such a small nation, but they've got the big import there through Rotterdam.
Yeah.
So they bring it in, but then they're exporting to the rest of Europe. So that's what you're saying, where it may go through multiple countries before it gets to whatever the destination is.
And the reality, it's business. So each person in between needs a cut. They have to stay afloat. It's not a 501(c) charitable contribution.
Yeah, very few of us are nonprofit.
So at some point they have to take a cut along the way, and then ultimately that's the catch. Is can the shelf price remain the same so the consumer's not impacted?
Well, we're getting shorter on time, but as far as your thoughts on tariffs on the global economy, I mean, obviously that genie's out of the bottle, isn't it?
For sure.
So
yeah, globally, I mean, politically, it shows toughness. It shows that we mean business. It shows that we care about international trade and relations and protecting our own companies and own corporations, and that we're thinking strategically. Economically, it's a source of money for the government, but also it hurts the pocketbook of the consumer.
And probably in the 1780s, it was much easier. You didn't have the global economy.
Very much so.
We were relying upon ourselves for the majority.
And then really, if you fast forward from there, it's by the 1970s, it's really when America started shifting into subsidizing and offering tax breaks for companies to move abroad. So globalization was really starting to get big. We benefited companies for actually shutting down. We provided them tax breaks. If they got rid of American employees, they actually got credit. And then they would move abroad, which is good because you could help a developing nation.
But now we're trying to bring them back in.
Yeah, so foreign direct investments helped the world, not just us, everybody. But now suddenly you're overseas, the money's staying overseas, you're not getting taxed on it. So it's almost like a form of tax evasion, but legal. Mm-hmm. And then in reality, now it's the norm.
So just that balancing act.
To bring it back is just that it's going to cause some ripples.
It is.
But the strategy piece, just to hit that one thing, is people don't connect like national security with tariffs.
Sure.
So during World War II, for example, Singer sewing machines stopped making sewing machines and they were making guns.
Because you had the manufacturing on home
Exactly.
soil.
You can't find a car American made in 1942. It doesn't exist.
No. Well, Chris,
So
I
are we
knew
out of
this was
time?
going to go way too quick, but you're a professor here at Eastern, so you obviously, if people have an interest, it'd be a great classes to get involved with. You did a good informational thing, and we just hit the tip of the iceberg, so thanks so much. And for all of you joining us today, thank you, and we will see you next time. Cheers.